There's a lot of parallels between Game of Thrones Episode 6 and House of the Dragon Episode 3. In both eras, the ruling King of the Seven Kingdoms has delicate issues at hand that need attention, but instead, they go out for a leisurely hunt in the Kingswood, a massive forest reserved for the royal family to go on hunting parties. Both of these series had bullet-paced first seasons, so some fun lore and backstory had to be cut. The book chapters, where King Robert Baratheon decides to leave his duties at court, are some of the wildest in the entire story. The Starks and Lannisters are at the brink of war, with Catelyn capturing Tyrion Lannister, accusing him of a failed assassination on her son Bran, and head of the Lannisters, Tywin, orders an attack on some Riverland villages in return for his son's imprisonment. Ned Stark, the new Hand of the King, is forced to sit on the Iron Throne in his king's absence, and deal with the royal family's closest allies. In Stark fashion, he honorably orders the head of Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, who's leading the attacks on the Riverlands, and for Tywin to answer for his crimes, all without talking it through with his old pal, the King. Ned foolishly antagonizes the Lannisters further by confronting Cersei about her treason, when he has so few friends at court compared to the Lannisters. This is the shit drunk King Bobby wanted to run away from. King Viserys' problems in House of Dragon are far more tame in comparison. His daughter and heir doesn't want to marry, and his brother is fighting a pointless war in the middle of nowhere. Instead of addressing these topics at hand brought to him by his small council, he celebrates his baby's second birthday with a trip to the Kingswood. Robert's a big-time hunter. One of the only decisions he made as king was tear down the dragon skulls in the throne room and cover the walls with hunting tapestries. The only thing his grace enjoys more than hunting is making war on lords who defy him, according to Ned. Viserys was more into slower-paced activities like dessert. The prospect of a white hart entices both complicated monarchs. A big deal was made of the occasion. Lord Renly and Sir Barristan Selmy had joined the king to hunt it, along with Prince Joffrey, Sandor Clegane, Balon Swan, and half the court, so Ned must sit on the Iron Throne in his absence. Curious events happen surrounding the chase for the White Hart in both timelines. It's actually naive Sansa who fills us in some fantasy White Hart lore in one of her chapters. "I had a dream that Joffrey would be the one to take the White Hart," she said. It had been more of a wish, actually, but it sounded better to call it a dream. Everyone knows that dreams were prophetic. White Harts are supposed to be very rare and magical, and in her heart, she knew her gallant prince was worthier than his drunken father. A dream, truly. Did Prince Joffrey just go up to it and touch it with his bare hand and do it no harm? "No," Sansa said. "He shot it with a golden arrow and brought it back for me." In the songs, the knights never killed magical beasts. They went up to them and touched them and did them no harm. But she knew Joffrey liked hunting, especially the killing part. Only animals, though. Nothing of the sort played out in the Game of Thrones era, not even in the books. A White Hart doesn't even appear to any character. They found a White Hart, it seemed, or rather what remained of it. Some wolves found it first and left his grace scarcely more than a hoof and a horn. Robert was in a fury until he heard talk of some monstrous boar deeper in the forest. Then nothing would do, but he must have it, and we all know how this ended for the king. I watched the first season of Game of Thrones long before I picked up any of the books, so I never connected the symbolism till much later on, since all this talk about wolves killing a deer never made it onto air. But isn't it strange that it was wolves that tore apart the stag? The very first episode kicked off with a direwolf mother found dead in the north, with a stag's antlers lodged in its throat, an omen connected to the Starks and Baratheons. This time, in the Kingswood, it was the opposite. It's likely the old gods had a hand in these animals' deaths, through the three-eyed raven or other means. If author George Martin wants to tie in another White Hart to the story, or even some lore, it'll be through this magical related religion. Too many common themes with nature, forests, and antlers to pass up. For now, in the main story, we have no concrete answer why they are believed to be magical, but things are expanded upon in House of the Dragon. Clearly, show writers took inspiration from this chapter in Game of Thrones to incorporate into Season 1, Episode 3 of House of the Dragon. And they made sure to answer the burning question for us, with that powerful scene with Rhaenyra being approached and seemingly chosen by the elusive White Hart, with or without Martin's involvement in the writing. Characters in this era didn't outright call it a magical beast, just a symbol of royalty in these lands before dragons ruled over Westeros, the king of the Kingswood. The Hand, Otto Hightower, tries to convince King Viserys that the gods were showing their favor by sending a White Hart. Their favor for his grandson, Aegon II, over the heir, Rhaenyra. The argument didn't leave a good impression on the king, who favored his daughter. Plus Otto mentioned the wrong gods. His family is in deep with the Faith of the Seven, more involved than any other noble house. Nature magic is the old gods thing. The Faith of the Seven isn't very fantastical at all, actually. Otto was just grasping for straws, saying, "I'm not one for science and portents, but on baby Aegon's birthday of all days." Well, that white hart was real good at hiding from Viserys and Aegon. Appearance-wise, a white hart is just a stag, white in color. Not too sure if the books are describing an albino deer. Calling them albino would make it too on the nose for a three-eyed raven comparison, who's the only known albino Targaryen, red eyes and all. King Viserys had to settle for a regular stag, unenthusiastically killing it with a spear, with that unimpressed look of dissatisfaction. It even took him 2 attempts to put it down because of a lack of effort, and he's not very skilled at arms. A very hungover Viserys believes the gods are punishing him for his indulgence. A line I really like. In this first season, the writers had such a high level of attention to this character, improving him from the book's underutilized counterpart, something George R. R. Martin himself admits. Marrying the pretty brunette girl and muddying the Targaryen line of succession was his overindulgence in House of the Dragon. The show version of Rhaenyra was fit to rule. He didn't need a male heir, but had 3 more sons in this second marriage anyway. Knowing House Hightower's plot for power, it was all plain to see. But he preferred to close his eyes to things he didn't like to see, just like Robert Baratheon. The gods didn't reward them or punish them, they did it themselves. Princess Rhaenyra, who does seem favored by the old gods, or at least some greenseers, is approached by the elusive white hart. An animal acting so out of character in this world is a sign that a magical follower of the old gods is in its mind. Her sworn shield, Kingsguard member Criston Cole unsheaths his sword in response to the animal's strange actions. Not characteristic of a deer in a forest, but Rhaenyra orders him to put the sword away. She knew it wouldn't attack, and the white hart knew Rhaenyra was the chosen one. But again, this version of Rhaenyra has alterations from the source material. Look, Rhaenyra is portrayed to be a little less likable when she's an adult. Open to interpretation, of course, because it's written in the perspective of biased maesters. Returning to camp with the White Hart's carcass may have won some believers to her side early into this power struggle. Rhaenyra questioned in this episode when speaking with Criston Cole if she would ever be recognized as the true ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, being a woman in this primitive world. But she still lets the deer go. Again, great attention to detail by the writers. Remember, Sansa teaches us that in the songs, the knights never killed magical beasts. They just went up to them and touched them and did them no harm. Joffrey likes the killing part, and so he's not fit to rule. Sansa wished so hard for the White Hart to choose her gallant prince over his drunken father, believing Joffrey to be worthier. Instead of King Viserys' camp calling Rhaenyra worthy, most looked at her bloodied appearance with disgust. Another callback to Game of Thrones to when King Robert Baratheon was charged by a boar in the Kingswood. In a very drunken state, he missed that thrust of his spear, something Ned says Bobby never did in the past, leading the boar to tearing up his abdomen, slowly killing him. Robert didn't want Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Barristan Selmy, to interfere in the face-off. Rhaenyra doesn't have this manly man's ego, and was assisted by Criston Cole in slaughtering the boar. Unfortunately for us show watchers, writers tried too hard to make Rhaenyra remain the likable realm's delight, as with Alicent Hightower's character. Of course, there were many other major flaws in the second season that I've gone on and on about. It was supposed to be a big character arc moment, grieving her son and fearing for the rest of her children in the Civil War. Instead, she turns gay. Being so rare adds an air of mysticism to any rare animal with a mutation. But White Harts look to be connected to the old gods. And what that means is either a current greenseer or one from the past physically attached to a weirwood tree, long dead or maybe still alive, lingering, controlling some white stags to send a powerful message. Its appearance is striking and impactful enough to do this. We also know of the ability that skin changers have to live a second life by entering an animal's mind right before they die, but that wouldn't really make too much sense considering a deer's lifespan. So I don't think a dead skin changer is in this White Hart. House of Dragon helped me come to this conclusion, and let's be honest, everyone would have forgotten about this fantastical creature, if not for this episode. And if you want to call it non-canon after feeling mixed due to questionable plot lines, that's fair. I like to take the author's feelings about adaptations. Martin was involved in the first season and approved creative liberties. His problems with House of Dragon come in the second season, when the budget cuts affected what they promised him. I highly recommend going back to the first season and enjoying it for what it is. I had to watch some scenes while making notes for this topic and ended up watching every second of episode 3. Shit was an hour long. I've seen it multiple times now, and I still enjoyed every single second. Tying something as obscure as a white hart to a succession war was outright good writing.